Welcome back to another episode of Take the Leap Management. If this is your first time tuning in, you're in for a treat. And if you're a regular listener, welcome back. It's always great to have you here. Today's episode is all about something that sounds simple on paper, but is often incredibly difficult in practice. Breaking down silos. We're going to take a look at how DevOps, a practice and mindset we've explored in previous episodes, is the ultimate silo buster, uniting development and operations in ways that transform not just teams, but entire organizations. So, grab a coffee, settle in, and let's get started. Let me set the scene for you. Picture a typical organization in the not-so-distant past, let's say 15 or 20 years ago. Development and operations teams were like two countries, separated by a mountain range, close enough to see each other, but with almost no interaction. Developers were responsible for creating new software, writing code, and dreaming up features that would wow customers. Their job was to innovate and move fast. Meanwhile, operations teams were responsible for stability. Their job was to make sure the systems didn't crash, the servers stayed online, and nothing, absolutely nothing, disrupted the customer experience. These two teams had fundamentally different goals. Developers wanted change. Operations wanted stability. And guess what? That often made them adversaries instead of allies. Let me tell you a story. To illustrate this, imagine a developer has spent weeks crafting a new feature. They're proud of it. It's sleek, innovative, and ready to go live. They pass it over to the operations team, expecting it to be deployed immediately. But the operations team takes one look and says, "Hold on a minute. This code is full of issues. It's going to break things in production." The developer pushes back. "It works on my machine." And just like that, you have a standoff. Sound familiar? This kind of scenario played out over and over again in organizations all over the world. And it wasn't just frustrating, it was downright inefficient. Projects were delayed, customers were let down, and teams were left pointing fingers instead of solving problems. Now, here's where DevOps enters the picture. DevOps is the bridge that connects these two worlds. It's not about forcing developers and operations teams to change who they are or what they do. Instead, it's about creating a shared culture and set of practices that align their goals. In a DevOps environment, developers don't just write code and throw it over the wall to operations. They work together with operations from the very beginning, collaborating on everything from planning to deployment. The result: faster delivery, fewer bottlenecks, and most importantly, happier teams and customers. Let's talk about collaboration, because that's really the heart of DevOps. Collaboration in a DevOps environment is all about breaking down barriers. And I mean that both literally and figuratively. On a literal level, many organizations are rethinking their physical workspaces to encourage collaboration. Instead of having developers in one building and operations in another, they're bringing everyone together in shared spaces. But it's not just about proximity, it's about mindset. DevOps encourages teams to see themselves as part of the same mission, working toward the same goals. When developers and operations teams sit down together to plan a project, they're not just looking at it from their individual perspectives. They're asking, what's best for the customer? What's best for the business? And how can we work together to make it happen? One of the biggest shifts that happens in a DevOps environment is the move toward shared responsibility. In the old days, developers would write the code, and if something went wrong in production, it was the operations team's problem. But in DevOps, everyone owns the outcome. If a bug makes it into production, it's not about blaming the developer or the operations team. It's about asking what went wrong in the process and how can we fix it together. This shift in mindset can be a game changer. It builds trust, fosters accountability, and, here's the big one, eliminates bottlenecks. Now, let's talk about bottlenecks for a second, because they're the bane of every team's existence. Bottlenecks slow things down, create frustration, and can even derail entire projects if they're not addressed. In a traditional setup, bottlenecks often occur at the handoff points between teams. Developers might finish their work and then have to wait days or even weeks for the operations team to deploy it. This isn't just inefficient, it's demoralizing. But in a DevOps setup, those handoff points start to disappear. Why? Because of practices like automation, continuous integration, and continuous deployment. These practices allow teams to move faster and with greater confidence. Code is automatically tested and deployed, reducing the need for manual intervention. And because developers and operations teams are working together, issues are caught and resolved earlier in the process. I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds great, but does it actually work in the real world? The answer is a resounding yes. Let me give you an example. Netflix, a company we all know and love, is a shining example of DevOps in action. Netflix doesn't just release new features or updates every few months. They deploy code thousands of times a day. Think about that for a second. Thousands of deployments every single day. And they can do this because they've embraced a DevOps culture that emphasizes collaboration, automation, and shared responsibility. Developers and operations teams at Netflix work hand in hand, using sophisticated tools and processes to ensure that everything runs smoothly. And when something does go wrong, they don't point fingers. They investigate, learn, and improve. Another great example is Etsy. A few years ago, Etsy was struggling with slow deployment times and frequent outages. Their development and operations teams were working in silos, and it was causing major headaches. But when they adopted DevOps, everything changed. By fostering collaboration and adopting practices like continuous integration and automated testing, they were able to cut their deployment times from hours to minutes. Today, Etsy is known as a leader in DevOps, and their story is proof that breaking down silos can lead to incredible results. Of course, I'd be lying if I said this transformation is easy. Breaking down silos takes time, effort, and, let's be honest, a bit of courage. People are naturally resistant to change, especially when it involves stepping out of their comfort zones. But here's the thing. The rewards are worth it. When teams start working together instead of against each other, amazing things happen. Projects move faster, quality improves, and the workplace becomes a much more enjoyable place to be. So, how do you get started? How do you break down silos and foster collaboration in your own organization? It starts with leadership. Leaders set the tone for the entire team, and if you want to create a DevOps culture, you need to lead by example. Encourage open communication, celebrate collaboration, and most importantly, create an environment where people feel safe taking risks and trying new things. Next, invest in the right tools and practices. Automation is a key part of DevOps, and there are plenty of tools out there that can help streamline workflows and eliminate bottlenecks. But remember, tools are only part of the equation. The real magic happens when teams embrace a collaborative mindset and take ownership of the process. And finally, be patient. Cultural change doesn't happen overnight, and there will be bumps along the way. But if you stay committed, the payoff will be worth it. You'll have a team that works together seamlessly, delivers value faster, and takes pride in their work. That's the power of DevOps. So, there you have it. Breaking silos isn't just about tearing down walls, it's about building bridges. It's about creating a culture where developers and operations teams aren't just co-workers, they're partners. And it's about delivering value to customers in a way that's faster, smarter, and more collaborative than ever before. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to Take the Leap Management for more stories, insights, and ideas that challenge the status quo. Until next time, keep taking the leap and keep pushing boundaries.